Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and guys, we are around 3 months away from the NHL Trade Deadline, and we're starting to hear some stuff going on about potential rumors, potential trades that could be coming here, maybe over the next couple of days, maybe over the next couple of weeks, maybe even over the next couple of months closer to the deadline. So we're going to be going over some of those in today's video. So this is from Dan Kingerski, and I apologize for mispronouncing your name, of the Pittsburgh Hockey Now. And he takes a look at 5 of the top players that could be available for trade here ahead of the deadline and probably into the off season. So number 5 on the list here was Jake DeBrusk of the Boston Bruins, and this is from his report. The Bruins are looking for quote-unquote equal value in any deal. He only has 5 goals and 3 assists so far in 25 games with the Bruins. He's been playing in the middle 6, the bottom 6. He has been scratched for a couple of games, so obviously his value is not as high as maybe people thought as soon as last year. And that may be interesting to a team in particular. I think the Edmonton Oilers would definitely be a good place for a guy like Jake DeBrusk to go. And, what's interesting is he'd be a little bit closer to where his dad reports a lot of his games, so that would be kind of cool. I don't know if that's the big reason that Jake DeBrusk would go there, but it's definitely interesting. And you look at the fact he's from Edmonton, Alberta, it does make sense. Now, he is 25 years old. He is not super old. He was one of the very infamous, the triplets in the 2015 NHL draft for the Bruins. It was Jake DeBrusk, Jakub Zboril, and Zach Senyshyn, all in consecutive picks, and we know the story on who else was picked in that draft. Again, I've been saying I have to do a video on that. I really do. But Jake DeBrusk was in that very infamous 2015 draft. He spent 1 season with the Providence Bruins, but before that, he spent a couple seasons in the WHL, 1 season in the AHL, and now this will be his 5th season in the NHL. His best season in the league, he picked up 43 points in 70 games. That was his rookie season, and ever since then, he has never gotten back to that potential. He is going to be a restricted free agent this summer. He's making $3.675 million this season. It was a 1 or 2 year deal, and that will be expiring this summer. So you would think that the Oilers would probably like to make a move sooner rather than later for Jake DeBrusk. Now, this is the next guy. At number 4 on the list is Bryan Rust, and this is from Mr. Kingerski. Bryan Rust has scored 20-plus goals the past 2 seasons, but has been bothered by a lower body injury this year. The pending UFA could be looking for 6 years at $6 million per year on a new deal. Now, the interesting about Bryan Rust here, he is right in his prime right now. He's 29 years old. He'll be turning 30 this coming summer in May. He is from Pontiac, Michigan. Now, that is something I'll get to here in a second. I think this is a guy that would definitely be interesting on the market. He played with the U.S. National Development Team. He played at the University of Notre Dame for 4 seasons. He played in Wilkes-Barre with the Scranton Penguins for 3 seasons. And since then, he has put together a pretty long NHL career. He's at 2, 4, 6, 7. He's basically played 7 full seasons in the NHL, and that 2014-15 season he played 14 games. So technically he's playing in his 8th NHL season at 29 years old. He was a 3rd-round pick back in 2010 of the Penguins, and has been a very good player. Again, very much like Jake DeBrusk, his contract ends this summer, but this is the difference. He is an unrestricted free agent this summer. So you wonder, at his $3.5 million cap hit, at $6 million in his next deal, that is going to be a lot of money for Bryan Rust. The key team I'm looking at here for Bryan Rust is the team from Michigan. Obviously, going back to his roots, like I said, he's from Pontiac, Michigan. The Red Wings are going to be looking for some center depth. Now, I don't know how Yzerman feels about his recent injury status, if that is going to maybe throw Yzerman away from that kind of move. But I wouldn't be surprised if this summer you saw a red and white jersey on the back of Bryan Rust going into next season. He may be a nice trade deadline acquisition for a team looking to go on a deep playoff run if they have a second or third round pick to give up for Bryan Rust, maybe even a first. They may be willing to give up a first and a second for Bryan Rust, but there will definitely be interest in him, again, as long as he can stay healthy. That's the key thing for Bryan Rust. And again, you look at his best season in the league, it was the 2019-2020 season. It was the quote-unquote bubble season, that very hectic year. He scored 56 points in 55 games that season, 27 goals, 29 assists, 56 points, a very impressive year for him, and he's still been pretty good since then. In the 2021 season, earlier this year, 42 points in 56 games, and even in his limited dozen games, he does have 9 points in his 12 games this season. He's played in almost 400 NHL games, so he has the experience, and he would be a nice addition there for the Detroit Red Wings. Again, we talk about the lack of depth. The Red Wings are one of those teams, and when you do have some of these younger guys on the roster, you may be able to maybe get him at a 3 or 4 year deal at $6 million this summer. Steve Yzerman might be interested in doing that, while he still has entry level deals for Moritz Seider, Lucas Raymond, and some of those guys on the list. He may be able to have the room to bring in a guy like Bryan Rust this summer, and again, obviously bringing in the kid from Michigan. At number 3 on this list, this was very interesting. It's Mark Giordano of the Seattle Kraken. So this is from the report. The pending UFA who can play on the top pairing, he could be worthy of a high draft pick and a prospect. Now, the thing about Giordano here, Big Gio, he's 38 years old. So this is probably his last kick at the can in the NHL. Maybe he goes in for one more season. This is not too far removed. The 2018-19 season at the NHL Awards, he won Defenseman of the Year. He won the Norris Trophy. Again, that was 3 seasons ago. That wasn't that long ago. And he's still been very capable. He's been with the Calgary Flames in the NHL since the 2005-2006 season. He's been, again, talking about kicking around as a veteran. He spent over 10 plus years in the league. He's going to be hitting his 1,000th game this season as long as he plays out the rest of this year. This is a very, very good defenseman. He won the Marc Messier Leadership Award in 2020. So this is a guy that it took him a little longer to develop. He's obviously not the best point-producing defenseman, but he still has 8 points in 24 games with Seattle this year, which is a point every 3 games. And the way he plays defensively, he is a more defensive-minded defenseman. The fact he picks up a point every 3 games on what most would consider, honestly, a bad Seattle team, that's actually pretty solid there for the 38-year-old defenseman. He is making $6.75 million, though, this season. Again, his contract will be ending in the summer of 2022, so he is a pending UFA, so he would be more of a deadline acquisition as a rental. Unless there's a sign-in trade in there, I would expect him to be dealt as a deadline move. Maybe a team, takes half the salary, or Seattle keeps half the salary, retains 50%, and maybe he goes to a cup contender at the end of the year. And I think there would definitely be interest in Giordano. And like they said, a high draft pick and a prospect could definitely be fetched for the former captain of the Calgary Flames. Now, at number 2, this is where things get a little bit interesting. This is a name we haven't really talked about much here on Goal Line Hockey on the channel. But with the way the Flyers season has gone here, I'm not terribly surprised about the Flyers captain Claude Giroux. So this is from the report. It could be time for the sides to move on. He carries an $8.275 million salary cap. He has 11 goals and 14 assists, which is going to be 25 points in 29 games so far this season. Obviously, the Flyers have had a very down season, and at 33 years old, Claude Giroux is not at the end of his NHL career, but like a lot of these guys I've already mentioned, he is a pending unrestricted free agent this summer. And if the Flyers don't make the playoffs this year, you'd probably figure that, well, what's the point in the Flyers keeping Giroux? Because if he doesn't sign here long term, he's going to think, we haven't made the playoffs in a couple years, and I'm not getting any younger. I want a cup chase. And he hasn't been to the playoffs since, I believe it was 2015, when they went to the Stanley Cup final, when they lost to the Chicago Blackhawks, right? Or 2012, or somewhere around there, right? So it's been a long time since then, and Giroux has been with the Flyers since the 2007-2008 season, coming out of Gatineau of the QMJHL. So, the Ontario native, Giroux, I think is definitely going to be a name to watch, a bigger name guy. And if the Flyers are looking to clear cap space to re-sign some of that young talent here over the next couple of years, they may not have no choice but to let Giroux go, and he may make that decision on his own that he wants to leave the Flyers. And a team that I think would be interested in Giroux, don't be surprised if the Montreal Canadiens take a swing on him this summer. I think he's a guy that, kind of like Bryan Rust, he'll probably go somewhere at the deadline to cup chase and sign long-term closer to home. And I think that's something that could definitely be on the table for Giroux. I wouldn't be surprised if the Leafs were in on the mix. Again, salary would have to be part of the equation here. But I think the Habs would definitely be a team. Again, he's from Quebec. He played in the QMJHL. That would definitely be a fit. So I look at the Montreal Canadiens as a team for Claude Giroux. If they don't get guys like Marchand or they don't get a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury, I do wonder if a guy like Claude Giroux ends up in the Habs uniform next year. Continuing along, we're moving up to number 1 on this list, and this is a name we have talked about here on the channel, but things have kind of quieted down recently because I think the Sharks are trying to see who's really interested in Tomas Hertl, and then closer to the deadline into the summer, we'll probably see that deal get done, and that is who we're talking about here, Tomas Hertl, the center of the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks may want to keep Hertl, but if they fall out of the race, they could move the pending unrestricted free agent. The cost would easily be a top pick and a top prospect. They can't lose him for nothing this summer. And I think that is the expectation, is Tomas Hertl will get traded. I think a lot of teams around the league would love to add a top 6 center into the mix. Tomas Hertl is still 28 years old, so he's just getting into his NHL prime, in the midst of his NHL prime. He is the 17th overall pick back in the 2012 NHL draft. One of his most famous moments was that goal he scored against Marty Biron back in the 2011-2012 season. One of his earlier seasons. Actually, no, the 2013-14 season. It was his first season. And he scored that incredible between-the-legs goal, roofed it on Biron. That was one of his most famous goals. And Tomas Hertl, again, a very talented player. He played in Worcester of the AHL for 1 season with the Sharks. He played 2 games, probably a conditioning stint. But he's been there since the 2013-14 season now. He's been there for some time. This will be his 8th NHL season. And at a $5.625 million cap hit, if Bryan Rust is getting $6 million potentially this summer, definitely somewhere in the number between 8 and 9 for Tomas Hertl on his next deal. There will be plenty of suitors for Tomas Hertl. I wonder if there's a certain team, I would have said Vegas before Jack Eichel. I think that would have been really interesting, right? The former Shark